what kind of equipment were you using when you started in your first videos, and how has that evolved to what you use today?
Oh, it was terrible. My equipment was so bad. I mean, sometimes I would just use my cell phone, which was like a Galaxy S3 or something. It was an awful cell phone for the video quality. The first camera I bought was a silver GoPro Hero 3, which I bought for this hike that I was doing in Norway called the Trolltunga hike. That was one of my first videos, hiking with this thing. And it's an amazing hike. It takes about 8 hours to get up, and it was like the longest hike of my life. It was this epic journey. And on the way up, after like 2 hours, I dropped the GoPro, and the lens landed right on a rock, and I chipped the lens.
Oh no.
So this is my first camera, my first hike. I'm like, okay, great start to your video journey, Dan. You just broke your brand new GoPro. But amazingly, even though the lens itself was chipped, it still worked. It just happened that a little bit of the camera image looked blurry. So some of my very earliest videos, you can see like, I think the left edge of the screen is a bit blurry. And people would leave comments saying like, you need to clean your lens, Dan. You need to clean your, I'm like, no, it's actually chipped. I can't clean it.
And you just continued with that camera and that lens.
I continued on for a little bit. The journey itself, I mean, I've had quite a few cameras, but the one that really got me started was called a Canon G7X, and that's a little pocket-sized point and shoot, really good on low light and decent audio. So the problem with the GoPro approach is the audio is no good. The video might be all right. You can go underwater, you can do some fun things, but you know, as a podcaster, of course, knows audio in some sense is just as important or even more important than the video. And someone once pointed out that if you're watching a video and the video quality is off, you can forgive that as long as it sounds okay. Like you'll keep watching. You don't mind if it's like a 10-year-old video with bad quality. But if the audio is off, it's just a really unpleasant experience. So even if it's beautifully shot, if there's like static noise and stuff, people just click away. They're like, I'm not going to deal with this.
Yeah, for sure.
So realizing that audio is actually really important was a big stage of that journey.
So you still do a lot of these sort of walk and talk type of videos. I saw one of your most recent ones where you and your girlfriend were walking down these snowy streets of Montreal. And so is that what you typically use, the kind of camera you're using there, or do you have like different kinds of cameras for different kinds of scenes?
So I have, sorry to reach here, but I have one camera here. I have everything from this, which is for people who aren't watching, I'm holding up my Canon 90D DSLR camera with a massive lens on the front. So I've got a tripod on this. I have a microphone on top. But this is like at least a 5 or 6 pound setup. So in the Mexico days when and you know, in most of my travel videos, I'm carrying around something like that and I'm holding it out in front of me. And actually I need to hold it quite far so it gets my face framed properly. And you don't just see a close up of my nose. So it's actually, it draws a lot of attention to you, which sometimes can be okay because sometimes people come up and they're like, hey, are you a YouTuber? What's your channel? Like I've probably got some subscribers just from people seeing me in public doing that. But sometimes you want to be inconspicuous. Sometimes you don't want everyone around you knowing you're making a YouTube video, especially in places like, I mean, I don't want to pick on Guatemala City, but that was one place where I didn't know what the safety situation was like right away. And suddenly you're a visible foreigner and you're carrying around $1,000 camera. Like that's a real concern.
Well, you know, I think it is a concern, and even as safe as I feel here, and I'm in zone 10. For those that don't know, Guatemala City's divided into all these zones, just kind of the way the city grew from its early days. But you know, I've been told certain zones don't even go. Certain zones are fine, but even some of the friends I've made here have told me, look, I know you're only about a 15, maybe 20-minute walk from where you're living to where you're working. You can walk that if you've got no valuables on you, but if you're carrying a backpack with a laptop, absolutely do not walk. Just take an Uber, and an Uber costs me like $2 or $3, each way, which is really ridiculous. I've thought about that because I'm looking and I'm going, I could document some things here, but at what point do I really take out an expensive camera or even my iPhone, and be this like sort of foreigner walking down the street, just an easy prey,
It's a real concern. I would say for someone in your situation, it's a good idea just start with your phone because, everyone has a phone anyway. So like if a potential thief might, okay, you're holding out your phone. So now they know you have a phone, but they probably know you have one anyway. So if they were in the mindset of they want to rob you, like they could, they might be able to make that happen anyway.
Yeah.
Whereas something about a big camera, and I don't even have the highest end cameras, so I don't have like a $5,000 setup or anything, but they might think I do because they might just see the name Canon and be like, that's an expensive camera. That's our target. We're going to follow this guy. And then who knows? Luckily, like I'm a pretty tall guy and I don't usually film after dark. So I take some precautions, but, I've never had a situation where my camera was stolen, knock on wood. I hope that never happens, but I know people it's happened to. So it is a good idea to take precautions and to start small with smaller cameras, not only because of the safety factor, but also because, the more expensive cameras now, they have the 4K video, they have the slow motion, they have all these features. But a lot of new YouTubers get lost in chasing the high quality. And it goes back to what I was saying earlier. You're not the travel channel and you shouldn't try to be. I mean, that might work for some people, but my approach has always been like, you just need to be relatable. You need to be honest. You need to show places as they actually are. And people will gravitate towards that energy. Like one of the biggest travel channels on YouTube is this guy named Bald and Bankrupt. And I don't know if you're familiar, but I've been watching a lot of his content recently. He walks around with an old camera that looks like the GoPro I started with 5-6 years ago. And he's very outgoing. So he's always talking to locals. He's a bit outrageous. So sometimes there's a bit of a, like, what's this crazy guy going to do next factor? But his videos get significantly more videos than the ones that like tourism boards are producing, where they have, the epic drone shots and all these beautiful footage of the country. Because to some extent, I think we're just kind of burned out on like beautiful imagery. Like we just get shown that so many times. It's like, oh, here's a beautiful waterfall from Guatemala, but I just saw a beautiful waterfall from Bali, Indonesia. Like, I don't need another one. I've seen that before. Show me something real. Show me something on the streets. Yeah. That's what I think the superpower is.
Well, that's what I've really enjoyed about your videos is just the authentic nature. And even we'll get into this in a little bit, but even just some of your recent commentary on just like, the travel experiences post-COVID and all that stuff. Say, what was the process like when you like starting a YouTube channel? What was it? How did you obtain so many followers, and how did you end up monetizing that as well?
Oh, big question. I'll start with how I got started. I mentioned how the blog sort of led me in there. So it was a very slow beginning. It wasn't even something I really announced to all my friends or anything, which actually I would sort of recommend people to do it that way. Like you might have an instinct to tell all your friends and all your connections, like, I'm starting a YouTube channel. It's a big thing. It's happening. But to be honest, your first few videos aren't going to be that good. You might think they're good, but a year later, you're going to be like, oh, what was I doing? Why did I use this as the moment to tell everyone about the big YouTube launch? Because unless you have a video editing background, you're just not going to be that good yet. You need time, and reading some of the early comments, watching other videos will help you develop, and just the process of doing it over and over will help you develop. So I would say your first videos might only get 5 or 6 views, but that's okay. Like, just think of it as like the first 10, the first 20. I'm just doing this from my own memories. If anyone else watches, that's cool. But don't try to be a famous YouTuber at the beginning, because that will only send you down the wrong path. And I think the greatest thing I ever did at the beginning was not try to copy or not try to emulate any of the really successful channels, because I wasn't like them. It took me about a year to get my first 1,000 subscribers, which is pretty crazy in that, you know, when my well, this year has been sort of bad year for travel, but when my channel is growing rapidly, I mean, I can get that in a week now, or even less. But I spent a year getting 1,000 subscribers, and then after 2 years, I was only up to about 3,000 or 4,000. It was really only when I went to Mexico, and a bit before that in Costa Rica, but Mexico was the big spark where like the audience really started to grow. And since then, other trips to India and Brazil. I mean, I've had a number of different breakthrough moments. But I will say that to some extent, a travel YouTuber is always like building two different audiences. There's the people who are traveling, and then there's the locals, right? And I've always tried to remember that in some sense, the locals are even more important than the travelers, at least the way I'm building my brand. And when I go to Mexico City, okay, I could show a few like attractions and I could get another traveler to want to go to Mexico City, and that's great. But even more than that, I just want a Mexican who watches it to be like, this guy gets my city. Like, he did justice to this place, because they know it best, right? So if I want to be authentic, if I want to be real about what's happening, I want to speak to the locals. I want to get them on my side. And, you know, Mexico City's got what, like 20 million people? There's a lot more locals than people visiting them. So if you can tap into that energy, then you can really start to get a lot of fans and a lot of viewership.